We gather here to celebrate the feast, or technically it's called a Solemnity. I'm not sure what the difference is. But at any rate, the Solemnity of the Ascension of the Lord. And as we gather, I suspect most of you, maybe even all of you, are aware that my dear precious mom died this past Tuesday. And certainly appreciate all the expressions of care and support that came to me before her death as she was weakening, and have come to me in the weeks since, or the 5 days since her death. They are very important to me, and not only has I experienced your care, but through this week I have also experienced various expressions of God's care and God's promise being fulfilled in my life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But even this Feast of the Ascension, we celebrate our experience, or beginning with the first followers, the experience of a certain sense of absence as Jesus is taken from their sight, and yet a new kind of presence. And the last line of the gospel is a promise: no, I am with you always. And certainly the gifts of Mom's goodness and love have been bestowed upon me and my siblings and her grandchildren and even great-grandchildren in a special way. And so, even as I say, this Feast of the Ascension invites me to enter in through the church and through my life experience, enter into the mystery of God's grace and love working in our lives. Earlier this week, I heard a little, what I want to say, lighthearted definition of the Feast of the Ascension. The Ascension is the day when Jesus started to work from home. And, if we just pondered that, we'd perhaps begin to get into some of the mystery of this moment, of this feast. Again, that God, who is always at work in our lives, Jesus, quote unquote, working from home. But the Ascension, our faith tells us, and the teaching of our church, the Ascension is part and parcel with the great mystery that we call the Paschal Mystery, the mystery of the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's a mystery that has moments on Holy Thursday and Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and the Pentecost feast we'll celebrate next week. These are all intertwined. And in point of fact, Jesus has been preparing his followers for this moment and for Good Friday as well. Throughout our Easter season, we've been reading a series of readings from the Gospel of John, most of them taken from Jesus speaking to his disciples after he has washed their feet at the Last Supper. And they are words of preparation. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid, he tells them. He tells them, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and then I will come back. He tells them, it is indeed better for you that I go, so that the Spirit, the Advocate, the Helper can come. He tells them, there's more that you will come to appreciate and understand. You can't deal with it now, but it will come. So throughout our Easter season, Jesus has been preparing us for this experience of a certain kind of absence, again, perhaps enabling us to experience a new kind of presence. And that connection between this day and this event of Ascension And the whole Paschal Mystery comes to us again as our gospel begins with the disciples having gone to Galilee. They go to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. And the orders come from women. Women who on Easter Sunday morning go to the tomb. They find it empty. And then they are asked a question. Why are you looking for him here? He ain't here. Tell your brothers to go to Galilee. And that's where our gospel this morning picks up. They go to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. And it is there that they experience something quite amazing, eh? Quite amazing. My friend and one of the people who I often turn to for inspiration and insight, Father Ron Rolheiser, many years ago, wrote an article, and he developed an idea about Galilee. I've touched that at various times over the years, but I'd like to read what Father Ron said, at least a portion of this article. On Easter Sunday morning, Ron writes, Mary Magdalene and some of the other women, armed with spices in view of embalming Jesus' dead body, went to the grave. They didn't find him there. Instead, they found an angel who, in effect, asked them, "Why are you looking in a cemetery for someone who is alive? He is not here." The angel added, "Go instead to Galilee, and he will meet you there." That instruction is still valid today. When we are looking to meet either our Lord or our loved ones who have died, we will find them in Galilee more so than in any cemetery. Where and what is Galilee? Galilee, for Mary Magdalene and the contemporaries of Jesus, was more than a place on the map, the northern part of Israel. It was also and especially the place where Jesus' spirit had flourished, the place where they had first met him, the place of his key miracles, and the place where their own spirits had been stretched, enlarged, warmed by contact with him. Galilee represented the place of their innocence, their first fervor, their initial learning, and their first falling in love. Now, after Jesus' death, they were being asked to go back to that place as the privileged spot where Jesus would meet them again. And our faith says the same thing to us. Like Mary Magdalene and the early Christian believers, we can meet our deceased loved ones and Lord by going back to Galilee. Namely, by going to those places where their spirits flourished, where our own spirits were instructed, stretched, and warmed with our contact with Jesus. There's both deep truth and deep challenge in the words the angel spoke to Mary Magdalene that Easter morning. "Why are you looking for a living one in a cemetery? He's not here. Go instead to Galilee, and you will meet him there." Where do we find the Lord? Where it is in Galilee, in those places where we most give our own unique expression to God's boundless love and energy. We meet the Lord in Galilee, in those places where his spirit flourished and our own souls were stretched and instructed and warmed by our contact with him. More than honoring his grave, we need to honor his life. We now need to honor the wonderful energy that he uniquely brought to life, and which in turn nurtured, instructed, stretched, cajoled, consoled, warmed, teased, humored, steadied, and blessed us. When we do that, our relationship with the Lord does not just continue, but it deepens. Last week I suggested that, at least in my reflection, I found 3 reasons for hope. You may recall, the first was the gift of creation, the second was the power of love, and the third was the goodness of life. And I might suggest that each of those is a Galilean sort. We can meet the Lord and realize God's power and great love in the beauty, the gift, the wonder, and unfortunately in the destructive power of nature. It's a Galilee. And it is there that we can, and many people say, I meet God, I meet the Lord in nature, in the beauty of creation, the gift of creation, the power of love. Once again, an experience that we all have that has the gift of our being children of God at its heart. And in our loving, we meet God. We experience the power that leads Him to want to be part of our lives regardless of the cost of such sharing and solidarity. And it is in sharing the goodness of life, in solidarity with one another in our relationships, in sharing such things as good music and good food and good drink and a good joke, but also sharing such things as healing and hope. And if healing is needed, it probably means there's been some hurt. And again, I think of our brothers and sisters impacted by the flood. The goodness of life is alive. And we respond with healing and hope when we share in solidarity with them. Then, too, we meet the Lord. It is a Galilean place. It's kind of like when He washed our feet. We also have a special shared Galilean place to meet the Lord at the table. But, throughout the pandemic, we've also had a privileged place to meet the Lord in our homes, to appreciate and share and wonder at and pray the gift of creation and the power of love and the goodness of life, even as we struggle through some dark days. For the Lord is alive. His light is shining for us. God's grace continues to work. Once again, back to my own personal experience of this past week and the experience of the dying, and then later in the week, the funeral of my mom. And throughout it all, I've had an amazing number of experiences of that grace blessing me, lifting me, comforting me, assuring me, loving me. As a matter of fact, the hospice chaplain said, you ought to write them down. So I'm trying to remember, okay, that one. But I'll quickly mention 3. One, the little white book, all week, all this week. The reflections of the little white book were almost custom made, as if they were addressed to me personally and to the family, my sister and 2 brothers who are sharing this loss. Speaking directly almost. It was amazing. So that was one thing. Another thing was the gospel on Tuesday, the day Mom died. Part of what Jesus was telling his friends, and I mentioned it earlier, is it's better for you that I leave. It's better for you that I leave. I'll still be part of your life. It goes on to say different kinds of words. But once again, kind of a sense that what's happening is part of God's plan. In many ways, it's better that Mom has died. We don't want her back lifeless except for a gentle in and out of her breath, seemingly unconscious totally. We don't want her back there. It is better. And one of the ways it is better, and again I say this with compassion for those whose homes and lives have been totally disrupted by the floods. Mom died about noon Tuesday. As we all know, Tuesday evening there came a series of evacuation orders as the water was surging and pouring into places we don't want it to go. And Mom's house was inside one of the evacuation areas. Me and my siblings all noted what a blessing it was for us that we didn't have to worry and wonder how we're going to take care of Mom in the midst of all this turmoil. The house was empty. Mom was safe. And we reflected, Mom and God were continuing to care for us even after her death. That is the message of the Ascension. A God who continues to care for, love, guide, heal, and help us all we need, even though at times he may seem absent. But I am with you always, he says. I am with you always, even to the end of the age.